Welcome everyone to the American Overlander podcast. I'm your host, Will Fowler from Venture to Rome. Now, Venture to Rome is a video YouTube channel where we go on epic adventures, we do installs and rig modifications and gear reviews and recommendations. So if you haven't already, head over to the channel, give it a watch, and if you like it, give it a sub. On this podcast, we go deeper into some of the subjects that we've covered on our videos. We go behind the scenes in some of those videos, and we interview movers and shakers in the overlanding world. So let's get into it. This episode was so much fun to record. My guest was Chris from Frontier State Overland, who is probably my best friend in the whole world and our most common companion on overlanding trips. So if you've watched any of our videos, you've probably seen Chris, his wife Elsha, and their kids out adventuring with us. And Chris is also my main compatriot for installs on our rigs. We've probably helped each other install just about everything we have, including buying an old Bantam trailer together and using it as a restoration project, which is actually a really fun series you can watch on our channel right now. So this episode covers how Chris and I caught the overlanding bug and the off-roading bug. We talk about how our childhoods influence our connection to the outdoors, how we became friends and how Jeeps were an early influencer in our lives, and how we ultimately found our way into overlanding and off-roading. So sit back and get ready for story time, because we cover some really fun memories and experiences along our paths to the lives we live today. Okay, let's get started. Today, I'm with my best buddy, Chris, again, and we are talking about how we got into overlanding, how it started for us. So let's just start with where you grew up. Where did you grow up, Chris? And how did that influence like your relationship with the outdoors?
Yeah, so I grew up in rural Idaho and Eastern Oregon. And it was one of those things where, you know, it's like really agricultural based. Like a lot of my friends had like farms and ranches. And so, you know, we would go out to their places and, you know, hang out with them, do like sleepovers and things like that. Or, you know, we'd also do like Sunday drives. And, you know,
like, wait a minute, wait. Like, what's a Sunday drive? What does that entail?
Yeah. So, and it was kind of used to be like an antiquated insult, you know, Sunday driver, but, you know, it's just like, you know, after church or something, you would go and it was a nice day. You go for like a drive out into the country and stuff and just kind of look around and just kind of enjoy the day. And,
now, as a kid, did you enjoy that? Because I think a lot of kids would not enjoy just having to sit in a car and drive for hours and hours.
As a kid, I did enjoy it. I really looked forward to those drives because we would get to see kind of what was over that hill. But it was really cool because I would always see these roads, and we would go down one road, and then there would be another road, and then it'd be another road. We'd be driving along in our 1978 Chevy Malibu two-door, and we kind of get to a point where it's like, okay, I think we should probably go back. But that just kind of got me going into like, man, I really want to see what's down those roads that are like really rocky, really steep, the places where we couldn't go. Those are the ones that I really wanted to go to. I
grew up on a dirt road way out side of Weiser, Idaho, and it was like a 15-minute drive just to get into town. But I was surrounded by ranches, farms, hills on a dirt road, and I honestly, like, I think back to that dirt road like for fun. You know, we would just explore as kids. For fun, we would just start walking, like walk down to the creek and find crawdads, or, you know, play hide and seek, or, you know, play some imaginary game, running around and hiding. And I knew it was time to come home when the coyotes would start howling. So yeah, when the coyotes start howling, it was like, now it's time. Like that's like get your butt home before the coyotes get you. But that's, you know, around sunset, you know, the coyotes would come out and we would all run home, you know, scared. We didn't really go on Sunday drives. We went to go like do things, like utilitarian things. Like we would drive up into the forest to cut wood because we needed wood for our fireplace to keep us warm. We would go to the lake to go fishing because we would eat the fish, and so on and so forth. And so like, I never really did a lot of like nature travel for fun. Camping was like, you know, we just sleep in the backyard. It was, we felt like we were camping. And so that, I didn't know at the time, but I kind of reacted against that. When I got to be a little bit older, I walked away from all that. I needed to get out of the country. So we both went to Ontario High School, which is in the sprawling metropolis of Ontario, Oregon. Population 10,000. It's like the big town in that part of the country. But we didn't really know each other that well.
It really wasn't until like the College of Idaho, and I was just starting my grad school, and my dad said, well, hey, how about this Will guy? You probably remember him, and you want him as a roommate? And I was like, oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. I need somebody to help pay the rent. Sure. And
little did you know.
Little did I know.
So we were roommates for, I don't know, a couple of years, kind of on and off. And we did so many things together that, like, I still remember, like, we're both James Bond fans. And so I think we had just watched a James Bond movie or something, like one of the obscure ones, like On Her Majesty's Secret Service or something like that.
Yeah.
And we were like, hey, let's make martinis.
Neither one of us have ever had a martini before.
Never had a martini. And they look so good, So I remember making martinis, and we got the recipe, and
like, is this how they're supposed to taste?
yeah.
Just keep adding like olive juice and
man, they were the dirtiest. They were the dirtiest martini. We just like started pouring. I remember I probably had 6 or 7 olives in mine.
And it was like 2/3 vermouth and olive juice and like a little bit of gin.
Okay, but there's one thing that I forgot to say, which I think is really important to the story, which is in college, you had a Jeep Cherokee Sport, blue.
Yeah.
With alloy wheels. And I thought it was like the coolest car. And we would talk about Jeeps. I didn't really know that much about Jeeps other than I liked them. And I remember having these conversations about, like, the most capable rig made was a Jeep Wrangler. And at that time, you can only get it in 2 doors.
Yeah.
And it was just like, man, can you imagine having a Jeep Wrangler? We could just go anywhere.
Yeah.
and then when I graduated college, my graduation gift was a new car. And I got a Jeep Cherokee Classic red with alloy wheels. It was kind of a wannabe Chris's car. I remember you were like, it has a solid rear axle, and it has like 4 high and 4 low, 4-wheel drive. And I was like, that's awesome. What's the stereo like? Like, I had no context for that. And I don't think I ever put that Cherokee in 4-wheel drive ever. So yeah. Anyway, that goes to show you, like, my context for Jeeps. So we were really close in college, and then, I was the best man at your wedding. You're the best man at my wedding. And then life kind of took us separate directions. And this is a long walk. We're going to get back to overlanding, but I think it helps to understand how we both got there. And I moved off to the East Coast. So I moved away. We stayed close in that we're always friends. We always spent time together whenever we could, but we weren't around each other very often. We're not real big phone or email people. So we just didn't do that. But I still was like getting away from the outdoors. I was getting away from that country road, that rural upbringing. And I went into the city. Like, I wanted to be in the city. I wanted to be in the middle. So when we went to New York City, we didn't live in one of the outer boroughs. We lived in Manhattan. Like, I wanted to be in it. We were like, 2 blocks from the Empire State Building. I think that's the place you came and visited us when you came to stay. We were at that little teeny tiny apartment that didn't get any sunlight, but was kind of close to everything. And then then we moved to the Upper East Side for some time and just really lived the city life. We explored all over Europe because we were so close, so easy to fly there. We went to Asia because it was easy to fly there, and just lived that life. That life.
But I thought you guys were never, ever going to leave the city. I thought, like, after visiting, I was like, well, I have a friend in New York I can go stay with. And I never thought you guys would ever leave.
We didn't either. I mean, we both had careers that were going well, but we just couldn't figure out the next 10 years. And so through a series of events, we wound up crash landing back in Idaho. Kate's from Boise, and I was from Weiser in Ontario, and so, but still, we like live right on the foothills in Boise, and we lived there.
And it was like 5 minutes away from downtown Boise too. So
5 minutes away from downtown Boise, like 2 minutes away from the trail system, and we never did it. I think I rode my mountain bike up there once. I was not connected to the outdoors. I was not connected to nature. And I don't know what your experience was like during that time in terms of like getting out. I think you guys were like hiking, right? Didn't you guys do like the John Muir Trail?
Yeah, like part of the John Muir Trail is because Elsha's dad was going to tele ski through the Sierras during the winter. And so he wanted to kind of check it out. So he had us just all over off trail. And so, yeah, that was kind of what we were doing. We were hiking and camping, backpacking and stuff.
And at some point you had bought a Jeep Wrangler.
Yeah. 2012.
Yeah.
I had waited for the 3.6 liter Pentastar to come out.
Yes.
And because I had test driven like one that, you know, had the 3.8, and it just felt like it needed more power. So
it was a soft, it's like remember there's like a soft feeling when you give it gas.
And it's not like the Pentastar has turned it into a rocket ship, but it's definitely livable. But yeah, so I in 2012 I got just a Sport, and I remember like, okay, I'm gonna mod this thing out, and I got a level kit, and I was able to squeeze 33s on there.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was like the best thing ever. And honestly, it did great until I did this, like the first kind of trip where I learned about like airing down and stuff. I'd had it for maybe like a year, and this guy at one of the Jeep clubs in the area invited me to go with him and his family across the Owyhee backcountry byway. And he rolled up, like I got to the place where we're going to meet, the rendezvous point, and you know, he pulls up and he's rocking 35s. And I was like, I looked like at mine, which those 33s seemed so big until he pulled up with those 35s. Yeah. And I was just like, oh man, how do I do that? But yeah, I couldn't figure out a way to, you know, to pay to redo the suspension and get 35s.
Yeah.
So I just stuck with the 33s, and they were great.
So you had a Jeep and you were actually out there trying to use it. So Kate and I wanted to buy a nicer car, or a fun car. And I really wanted a black on black Jeep. I was like, black on black, baby. We're going to do this. It's going to be like midnight. And I couldn't really do it. Kate was like, nah, that's not really my thing. And so we found this all white Jeep Sahara. And one thing that I really liked was that the fenders are the same color. Because one thing that I do not like about the JKs is how faded those black plastic fenders look in relatively short amount of time. You got to do a lot of work to keep them looking good. So I liked the all white look. And my my stepbrother was a salesperson at this car lot, but he was like, look, we're not dropping the price on that. There's no way. And I was like, it's just so expensive. And he was like, that's just how much they cost. So there's no, like, my boss is not going to let me give you a good deal on that. Sorry. I can give you like, you know, maybe I can give you like $500 off. And I was like, He's like, but I'll tell you what, nobody else wants to pay that either. And so if you just wait for like 6 weeks. And in 6 weeks, when nobody buys that Jeep, probably they're going to drop the price by a few $1,000s. And I was like, okay, because we were in no hurry. And sure enough, 6 weeks later, Bo texted me and he was like, drop the price. And I was like, oh, I'll see you this afternoon. And so we showed up that afternoon. We bought the Jeep and it had 33s on it. It had 18-inch. It still has, I haven't gotten rid of these yet. It has 18-inch fuel wheels on it. It had 33s. They were Toyo Open Country AT2 Extremes.
Yeah.
Which I would classify as like a hybrid between an all-terrain and a mud tire. So the tread was a little deeper. They seemed like very wide. And it had,
they were like 13 and a half inches wide.
Yeah.
Yeah, good size.
Had a Fab Tech. I think it was like a 2-inch lift on it, maybe. And it was a bump stop lift. And I thought it was I thought I had like the best lift in the world. I was like, dude, I have a Fab Tech bump stop lift. And you're like, and you're like, those are nice tires though. So anyway, so I bought it and never took it off road. Took the top off all the time. It was like, it's so fun to drive around. I mean, it was just, we had so much fun in that Jeep. Okay, this is where we're getting back to overlanding. And then you called me up and you were like, let's go on a Jeep trip. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And you're like, I want to go on this road. I drove on it with Elsha a little bit, and I think it would be really fun to take the Jeeps on it. It's up past Ketchum. We can go stay at my family's cabin. And I was like, well, like, how difficult is it? And you're like, it's pretty difficult, but Jeeps will be just fine. And I was like, well, I don't want to like scratch my paint. You're like, Jeeps were made for this, Will. They were made to do this stuff. And I was like, okay. It was me, you, and our good buddy JP, who had at the time like an 03 4Runner that was
Rocketansky.
Rocketansky is what we called it. That had a ton of modifications. Like, it was a true rig.
It was dialed in for sure.
And we drove in this trail. The trail's called the Boulder Basin Trail. It's a well-known trail in Idaho. Anybody who off-roads overlands knows that trail in Idaho. And it's amazing. It is an amazing trail. It was a little much for me for my first time.
Well, that makes 2 of us. Actually, it makes 3 of us.
Yeah, we were so stressed out.
I had a migraine by the end.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We went out for pizza and you're like, I'm going home, guys. I can't see straight. You're like, I don't know what's wrong. I was like, are you just like stressed? And you're like, no, it's gotta be something else. I'm like, okay. And the next morning you're like,
no, I was stressed
out.
Yeah, I was stressed.
But we went on this adventure. We needed our Jeeps to get where we wanted to go. And it was the first time I used my Jeep as a tool. I remember I recorded it because I've always been kind of a video geek. Okay, we're getting ready to head out on the Boulder Basin Trail with 2 Jeeps and a 4Runner. We let the 4Runner come along because he's a nice guy, but otherwise we wouldn't have let the 4Runner come with us. But it's a pretty sweet 4Runner, so say it. And there's Chris. Let's go. And I recorded like my video diary of the trip. And on the way up, I am like freaking out about rocks. Like, oh my God, this is gonna pop my tire, or I don't want a high center. Oh my, I'm in a high center, my Jeep. I'm gonna try to pick my line here and not blow my tires or high center my Jeep. Here we go. And these are like,
I remember some of the audio from that trip.
Yeah. I'm embarrassed to share it. Following Chris as he navigates some monster rocks up there. Look at him go. But it was, I had real fear. And then we went on a water crossing, did like water crossing. We drove through a creek bed. And on the way back down, I was like, come on, I got this. Like, give me a rock, put a tire on it. I can do this. Trail seems so easy down here compared to what we were doing up on top of the mountain. Like I was like coming down, I had so much more confidence driving my Jeep off road, even though I was still a total noob, that it was like, well, this is something that I didn't know I could do. And it was a total eye opener for me.
Yeah. And I think too, that was the trip where you kind of had a little bit of an eye opener too, as to the limitations of the old Fab Tech lift, because like I at that time had moved on to my second. The first Wrangler had been wrecked.
Yeah, I remember. This is maybe an important part of our Jeep friendship. At least it is for me. I remember you got in an accident in your in your old Jeep, and it was a terrible freak accident. You were lucky to live, and both your girls were too. And that's beside the point. Like, glad you're still around, buddy. But
thanks.
was completely total. And I didn't know what to do. Like, I wanted to like do something. So I remember, and I was like, but he's not going to accept any help from me because that's just the way Chris is. And so I remember I had my dad follow me out to your house, and I just left my Jeep there.
Yeah. Well, I remember this is like literally like the day after, maybe 2 days after, but yeah, like I get a call and it's Will, and he's like, "Hey man, yeah, come to your front door." It was kind of, and I was like, huh? And so I open up the door and there's Will and his dad standing there, and he's a great guy. He,
Yeah.
he give you the shirt off his back, and so I kind of see where where Will gets it a bit, and Will's like, "Yeah, so you're a Jeep guy and you don't have a Jeep now, so I think you should drive my Jeep." You handed me the keys to Finn, and I had Finn for like a month.
Oh yeah. I don't
And
know how long it was, but I was so happy that I was so happy that you had Finn, because I didn't need it. We had
well,
another car. It was our third car. So I was so happy. I was like, I can, at least he can drive a Jeep tomorrow. Like he totaled his Jeep. At least he doesn't have to get into a Subaru.
well, and so but the thing is that I think 99% of like Jeep owners would have like showed up like, "Hey, here's the keys to my Camry. I'm going to drive the Jeep while you drive my Camry." I mean, the reason I chose Camry is because that's what you were driving.
That's what I drove. We had a Camry and we had a Highlander, and we had the Jeep. Yeah. And you definitely got the Jeep. I mean, it's all I could think of to do, because what a traumatic experience, and to have your Jeep totaled. And it wasn't your Jeep, but at least it was a Jeep,
Oh, and it was awesome. And the thing was too, is that like, to add insult to injury though, is like I pulled up like, a week, after the accident, when I finally was clear to go back to work, and the kids at the school where I work, they were like, "Wow, this Jeep is way nicer than your old Jeep, Mr. Taggart." And I was like, "Thanks." Because Finn is even back then, it was just like an eye-catching rig.
But then you came out of that deal with a new Rubicon, and that's Ripley. That's the rig that you have now.
I had gotten my current rig, Ripley.
I think of it like it's so like tactical. It's like got a sweet suspension, awesome wheels and tires on it, and it is like very purposely built with the way that you kind of mount it up. It is a trail rig. It is an overlanding trail rig. It's just awesome. I love it when our rigs are out together, because it's like when we're like mounted up and out on the trail, it's like, those two Jeeps belong together. They're like, their intent is very clear.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, like our first like actual overlanding adventure. And I think at that point we were still kind of trying to figure out like what direction we wanted our rigs to go. I think we both we hadn't talked about it or anything. But I don't think either one of us wanted to do like just rock crawling. I think we both about the same time stumbled on some vids of like the Australians, like Ronnie Dahl and
the Dalai Lama. The Ronnie Dalai Lama.
Yeah. Ronnie Dalai Lama. Yep. Hashtag. I like that. But anyway, but like we had just kind of started to see some of these things that were like, that is really cool. These guys are going way out into the middle of nowhere.
Honestly, before our first trip, you had spent more time doing that than me, because I didn't know what overlanding meant. I had watched some of those, and I think you'd sent me some of those videos, and I watched them, and I thought they were really cool. And but I was confused because a bunch of Toyotas and not a lot of Jeeps. But like, but I didn't know what overlanding. I didn't know the term overlanding until you called me up and you're like, "Let's go on a trip. Let's go on like a trip together. Like, let's go pack up the Jeeps and go." And I was like, "Dude, there is no way I can do that without taking the kids." And you're like, "Okay, let's just take the kids." And I was like, "All right, so me, you, the kids, we're just gonna go." And you're like, "Yeah." And you're like, it's called overlanding. And I was like, "Well, I like the name, but what does that mean?" And you're like, it's like where you drive, you go on like cool, difficult, but scenic and remote trails, and you kind of camp along the way. But the point isn't to go camping. The point is to go see what you can see out there and enjoy the experience. And I was like, "Okay." And we had I think it's like a 12-person tent. It's so huge.
Yeah, like the instant Coleman tent.
I bought it at Costco the year before for something, I can't remember what. And it was just this massive thing. And I just remember just hucking so much stuff in the back of the Jeep, and we hit the road. And I think we had to leave late because I didn't have a key to my lug nuts. We had to go find a key.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, "I'm not leaving if I can't change a tire. Like, I'm just not going to do that." And so we had to go to some obscure like black market lug nut dealer to find a key. And I thought I didn't have a jack too. I was like, I need to buy a jack. There's no jack in this. And you're like, why don't you look just look in the back of your Jeep, just pull up the thing. There's usually a jack that's right there. And it's like, I looked there, Chris, there's no jack. And you're like, are you sure you looked there? And I was like, yes, I looked there. And I bought a jack. And then I was like, where am I going to put this? And so I was like, let me put it here. And I lifted up the thing, and there's the jack that came with it. In any case, we drove up over the top of Bogus Basin, which
down
is
to Placerville.
Yeah, which is a local ski hill here in Boise. And we got up on top of the Boise Ridge.
Yeah.
The Ridge Mountains. And
you just see for miles in any direction.
It was like a spiritual experience for me to be up there. It was like a whole new world that I'd never seen in my entire life. And I remember looking out on those Boise mountains and just being floored by the fact that I got to be there on that ridge, no one else around, just you and me, driving this road that existed, that was there for us to drive on. Yeah. And no one else is doing this.
No, and I think a lot of people still don't know that road is there.
Driving from Bogus Basin over to Harris Creek Summit with our Jeeps. It's Chris Taggart, my best buddy, and my Jeep here. We brought our kids this trip, and right now we're driving the mountain pass between Bogus Basin and Harris Creek Summit, and some of the vistas that we have along the way are just incredible. You can see just the range of mountains out there, and it was just too good to pass up. I had to stop and take a quick video. We kept going. We went down into Placerville. We drove up to Deadwood Reservoir.
Yeah.
And we set up camp, and I got my big 12-person tent out and all that. And the kids had fun playing in the water. I think you were making gin and tonics that night. And I have video that I don't want to share because I think I'm a little tipsy on camera. Two buddies from college with two Jeeps, a Rubicon and a Sahara, with both of their kids. So they each have two kids, went on a Jeep trip. And this is night one. As are you. Do it again.
All right, ready?
Yep. We put the kids to bed. We were sitting out there in our camp chairs, looking up at the stars, chatting. And it was like the constraints of being in nature, I found to be so freeing. Meaning like there's no cell coverage. There's no internet. There's no iPads. It's too dark to read a book. So what do? You sit on the campfire and you connect. Yeah. And you just talk and you look at the stars and they're awe-inspiring. And that was
there's no man-made lights out there like anywhere close.
Yeah. It was a massive experience for me. And I don't know. I mean, you'd been camping and stuff before, but I don't know if that was your first time out like that or not.
So like that, I think was like the first or the second trip that I had done. I think maybe it was the second. JP and I had gone on one. Like the Sucker Creek, and it was just one of those things where the kids kept asking like, well, where are we going? And I was like, well, we're going to be going to like this area. Like, well, when we're going to get there? I was like, I don't know. And it was really hard for them, especially as kids. They wanted to know like what the end goal was, what time we're going to get there, where are we going, and I think for them now that they're quite a bit older, they don't really ask like when we're going to be there, where we're going. Although now I think we have more of an idea about like some points that we like to get to, especially you with your mapping skills are like so awesome, because you can't check your text. You can't check your email. You can't stream something.
I don't know if people who haven't done that before truly know how profound that is.
Yeah. I
find it to be profound. It's still, every time we go, I find it to be a profound experience. To be totally disconnected. And you hear this in it's profound for me. So I keep putting it in my videos. To be disconnected from the grid, disconnected, that constraint of being disconnected causes a greater connection to nature and to the people around you. You're actually more connected when you disconnect from the grid, because you're actually now, like you said, you're like alive in the space that you're in. All your senses are more alive, and something happens when you hit the trail with a friend. You go from being a friend to a teammate,
Mhm.
and you're on a mission together. And the mission is to have a great time camping, but like you're going from point A to point B and you're
Mhm.
working together to get there. And then you get to camp and you're kind of working together, even though you're doing your own things, you're like setting up your camp together and
Mhm.
tearing it down together and going. And there's this cohesiveness that happens. That cohesiveness is driven by the fact that we're not texting.
Yeah.
We're not
It does.
distracted by anybody else. We're not thinking. We can't think about work because we've got to set up our tent. We've got like a real problem, which is if I don't set this up, I'm sleeping on the ground tonight.
Yeah. And are those storm clouds or, like,
Yes.
Yeah, but it does.
Yeah.
It forces you to be present with the people that you're there with and to focus on, very specific tasks.
So I remember that first night being so profound for me. Next morning, I got up. I'm a little bit of an early riser, so I'm usually the first one up at camp. First thing is I made coffee, and I was like, Chris is gonna have a good cup of coffee when he wakes up. So then I had brought some fishing poles for my kids, and I wanted to go fishing before we left for our next destination, which I think was Yellow Pine, which I've never been to still to this day.
We still need to do that.
Yeah. So like, yes, there's a twist here. So I had this brand new, really nice, no, not really nice, really sharp, let's say, camp knife. And I was trying to open up this fishing rod that had zip ties kind of holding it to the packaging. And I put pressure in there to cut through the zip tie. The knife slipped off and just went right into my finger. And it was a hard hit. And I remember when it hit, I was like, oh no, that's not good. That was too hard. It like bit deep. I was like getting my first aid kit out, which I just got. So I was like trying to hold my finger to like keep it together and keep it from gushing blood, finding my first aid kit, trying to get Band-Aids out. And by about this time, you're getting up and you're like really kind of
putting my contacts in.
And you're just like, oh man, it is early in the morning. And I was like, yep, there's coffee there for you, Chris, if you want some. And you're like,
and
I
see you with a pile of Band-Aids trying desperately to cover this thing up. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, oh, I cut myself. I'm like, can I see? But it was kind of hard for you to not show because the Band-Aids are just soaked in blood. Like they are just like, as soon as you're putting them on, they are just soaking up. I'm like, yeah, let's see that, man. And you pull it back and I'm like, oh yeah, you need stitches.
You were like, and you need help. Like you need help bandage. You can't do this by yourself. And I was like, oh, okay. So I remember you helped me wrap it up. And then I had to pick up camp. Break down camp. This is why I have a different camp setup now. That experience was like scarred me. It was like, I have to go to the emergency room. But before I go to the emergency room, I've got to get my kids up, roll their sleeping bags up, deflate the air mattresses, get those out of the tent, break down the tent, get the tarps folded up. It was
a big deal.
Pack it all back into the Jeep. And I don't have use of one of my hands, basically. I have use of kind of like, well, I could still kind of use my hand a little bit, but I had to be really, really careful with it.
Yeah.
And, it took going as in emergency mode, it still took 30 minutes or 40 minutes.
Oh, at least. Yeah. And it was a team effort too. Like we're enlisting the kids to do things, or, helping each other out. And in the meantime, the bandage, like the wrapping is turning just red.
Right. And my finger is turning black and blue. We had wrapped it tight enough that I lost all feeling in my finger. And I remember I was like, my finger is dead and numb. That's probably not good. And I was like, did I cut a nerve or something? And, all the things going through your head. So I was like, let's go. We hit the trail. We had a great night at Deadwood Reservoir. This morning, as we were just getting ready for breakfast and making coffee, I unfortunately spliced my finger open. So I really nailed it. And bad enough that I probably need to get stitches or get it at least glued up. So we're gonna continue on to Warm Lake, which is about a 2-hour drive from Deadwood. And this is the first time I really understood how awesome it was to have a Jeep with tires aired down, sway bar connectors. My sway bar connectors were off. It was probably 30 miles, maybe 40 miles.
Yeah, it was a good distance, and they weren't, and this is like some serious roads too.
No, it may have been 50 miles, Chris. I think it was anyway. In any case,
Yeah,
and
it was a long. It was
we
a
were
good distance.
just bombing the roads. Like, I don't know, 50 miles an hour. I think 55 sometimes, depending on the, when safely on straightaways, we were going really fast, and the Jeep was just soaking it in. It's like driving a Ferrari, except for you're off road. It's like this rig is made to do this. Got to the emergency room, and the previous day and the drive, because the drive was pretty awesome getting to the hospital. Previous day, the night had me so wound up that I was negotiating with the emergency room staff on whether or not I could keep camping. I got 4 or 5 stitches in my finger, and I was like, "What do you think, doc? Like, think I could just keep going?" And he was like, "Well, I mean, you're going to be using your hand a lot if you go camping, right? And you're going to be like out in the dirt." And I was like, "No, it's cool. It's cool. Like, I think I can do it. I'll keep it real clean. I'll like cover it up, do all the stuff." And he was like, "Well, I mean, if you want to, you're probably would be okay. Just make sure that you don't get it dirty." And I remember he was literally stitching my hand, and I had my phone with Gaia GPS in my other hand.
I was just going to say that you're sending me texts from getting stitched. And I'm like, the girls are like, "What's that?" I was like, "Oh, it's Uncle Will. He's sending us some possible routes." And I was like, "Do you want to keep going?" And you're like, "Yeah, the doctor said it's okay. What do you think about this? What do you think about this?" And you're sending like 4 or 5 different routes while you're getting stitched up, in the emergency room.
Yeah. That I think is probably a pretty good indicator that I had caught the bug after one night. And dude, we randomly found a lake 18 miles on the other side of a ski hill in McCall, Idaho.
Yeah.
Because that's where I was.
Hazard Lakes.
Yeah. Upper Hazard Lake. We drove up there. It was an awesome drive. Yeah. And just beautiful. I mean, not technical at all, just beautiful dirt roads, beautiful countryside. And we let the kids go swimming in the lake. We found a campsite, we set up camp, and we had an awesome night. That's the night that we saw a satellite burn up in the atmosphere. Remember that?
Well, and it wasn't just like seeing a satellite burning up. You were like, "Hey, there's a satellite." And I was like, "Oh, that's what those are," because I didn't put together that, "Oh, those are satellites flying across the sky." And you're like, "Yeah, sometimes they go to like a low Earth orbit, then they burn up. And then it just like right on cue, burn up." And we're just like, "What?
Yeah.
How did that happen?"
Yeah.
But I mean, there was like a couple of coincidences on that last part of the trip, because there was that truck that they had a flat tire. And they had a pretty big hole in it, and they didn't have a spare. And you were setting up camp, and the girls and I were just like exploring a little bit further. And he's like, he and his wife are frantically waving people down, but nobody can help them because nobody had a tire patch kit.
Yeah.
Until I came along, and I had this tire patch kit that I still carry with me that was like
tire plugs, right?
Cheap. Yeah. And so it's got like the rubber plugs and the reamer and all that stuff. And he's like, "Hey man," he's like, "Do you have a tire patch kit?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Of course I do.
The look on his face was like pure like elation. And his wife was just so super excited. And it took like 4 plugs to patch that hole. Yeah, it was massive. Like he ran over like a stick in the road, and it just hit his tire perfectly and made a big plug in it. And so I aired him up, and I was like, "Yeah, you better bomb it down, because I don't know how long this is going to last." But sure enough, they just took off and made it down, I assume. Like he was a rancher, and so he gave, was like trying to give me all this like meat and beer and stuff. And I think I took some of the meat and beer, but
I think you did.
Anyway, it was just like funny, because if you hadn't slashed your finger, I doubt we would have seen that satellite burn up.
Yeah. And
I doubt that, we would have been there to help that guy and his wife out. And it was just a beautiful spot.
And I don't know about most people, but even here in Boise, Idaho, and you live out in Caldwell, you don't see stuff like that. The night sky doesn't show you all of it when you're in any town because of light pollution. When you're out there and you can see everything, it's just a special experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we wrapped that trip up, and then I said, Kate, there's this thing called overlanding. And Kate was like, sounds like something you and Chris would do. And I was like, it is. It was amazing. And I think we should try it. And she was like, you know what, honey, I love you. If you want to do it, I'll do it with you. And I was like, okay, great. And so then we went our first trip as a family, and we went up to Trinity Mountain Lakes, which, by the way, just released a video. We tried to go back and we failed. We didn't make it. But we will go back. It's only because of stupid mistakes, not because anything bad really happened.
Yeah.
But we went up there, and I don't know anything. I'm trying to get the weather forecast off my CB. I don't even know what the weather button looks like on my CB. I remember the next day I called you and I was like, I was trying to find the weather button. You're like, it says WX on it. And I was like, oh. But so we get up there and we camp. We're the only ones up there. And this massive thunderstorm rolls in at like 9 o'clock, and it is raining. It is pouring. And the lightning, when you're up at 8,000 feet, and the cloud is just like scraping the mountain, it feels like every bolt is coming for you. In fact, there was another couple who drove up in their sedan, and they set up a tent, and they got so freaked out. They just took the tent and they like crushed it in the trunk. They didn't even take it apart. They were like, we need to leave now. And they crushed in the trunk and they bugged out. And I was like, I think that was the worst possible move, because those roads were so muddy from all the rain.
Yeah.
And they're going back down at night. So in any case, we got in the Jeep and we all sat in the Jeep for a while just to be safe, because the lightning was so intense. But then lightning passed and the sky was clear. It was about 10:30 at this point. Kate and I started a fire. We sat around the fire and we were thankful to be alive. And we looked up at the stars and we had those conversations that you have. And it was a magical experience. And the kids were fine. I had forgot to bring the thing that airs up the air mattress. So we slept on the ground. We slept with sleeping bags were like on the ground. And yet we woke up the next day. We had an amazing breakfast. And then we hit the trail again. And that's when Kate caught the bug. Now that second night, we didn't camp because we were afraid to camp again. We were also afraid. We were afraid, like we didn't really know how to do it. We didn't really know what to do. Like, is it okay to camp here or not camp here? Is this a safe place? Are the bears going to get us here? Are the wolves going to get, like, there's all these things that we just didn't really know. And we were alone. And I remember thinking like, I wish Chris and Elsha were with us, because it always feels better when you're with somebody else to kind of talk through these things, which is why overlanding is kind of a group sport. But
it's a buddy system for sure.
Yeah. But from that point on, for us, it was overlanding, and Kate got super involved, and she's like, if we're doing this right. And we just put a ton of time and effort into designing what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, how to pack tents, all, like, every detail. And that's been a huge part of our lives ever since.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because there's definitely a big, just kind of thinking back on it, like there's such a huge evolution about, like, from when you start, like, trying to make your camp setup as efficient as possible, and, loading up and, paring things down that you don't need, there's like kind of that tangible gear part of it. But then there's also like, there's a little bit of discomfort going out to areas where you are so far out. And I think it can freak a lot of people out, because we go to some really remote areas. Yeah. I mean, you're like several days walk to like any man-made structure. And there's no cell phone service. The chances of getting a tow truck or something out in these areas is really remote. Yeah. And getting comfortable with that, not just comfortable, but to a point where you really just you just crave it. And that's what you look for, and then the other thing too, is just, there's kind of like a faith that kind of evolves too, where I remember when we first started and it was like, oh, that looks like a good campsite. And we would take kind of the first spot that we found. Yep. And just kind of settle. Yeah. And it's because, well, I don't know if there's going to be another spot. Well, now it's like, yeah, this is a nice one, but let's see what's around this bend. And sometimes, maybe to a fault, where all of a sudden it's like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and People are starting to get a little hangry, but
that has happened.
It has happened. But, you also have those experiences too, where you just wake up in the morning and you're like, oh man, this is an amazing spot. I didn't even know it. Or you do find those spots just around the corner.
Yeah.
And just having that faith that, there's going to be something.
Kate calls it, she says, she always says it's all about the discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the discomfort that you experience that makes it so special. It's that constraint. The constraints drive new feelings and new experiences. And it's like, and fear and unknown and like living in that space, even if it's just for a weekend, I think it changes you as a person.
Yeah.
You come back and you're like, yeah, I can pick up I can make a choice on the groceries now. That's easy. Like,
yeah.
You can do this other stuff. That's easy because I was just in a very unknown place. And for me, what I really love, I love going to super remote places. I do not like going to places that have any level of traffic in them. And we do, but like if I had to choose, I want to go to a place that no one's been to yet this year. And whenever that happens, I just find something so satisfying about sparsity, of people, and just thinking, I'm the first person to look at this stuff this year. I'm the first person to see this. And it's like an exclusive club of people who get out and experience those things and get to those places.
Well, it's fun too, because when I had my old trailer new, I had to have like some wheel spacers kind of bored out. And I took it to a place here in Caldwell, and it's an older guy that's been doing it for a long time. And he was asking what they were for, and just a super nice guy. And so I told him what we like to do. And he's like, his eyes just lit up. And he's like, oh, have you guys been to this place? I was like, no, I've never heard of that. And he's like, yeah. And how about this place? And, he's naming all these places that I've never, ever heard of, and then it's like, okay, well, I started like writing them down and checking them out. And, and I've had experiences with, with that fabricator and like our veterinarian and, like older relatives that they're just, they think it's like great. And they're so willing to share like, places that, are really off the beaten path that not a lot of people know about. Old mining towns and, mountains and passes that people just kind of forget about because they're not easily accessible.
I think it's so cool. Like even on our social media channels, so YouTube and Instagram, Facebook, when I'll post something, and I try to never geotag anything, but I don't mind giving clues to where it is. However, I love it when somebody sees a picture and they're like, oh, I know that place. There's like this, you just have this instant connection. And I do it to other people who post, like when I'm like, oh, I know that place. And I have to say like, I know that place. And it's like this exclusive club that you're in, that you were both there and you get to share it. I think that's, that community that's built around people who go out and you never forget. I don't think you ever forget a place when you're out there.
And you find a few, the goal is, at least for me, it's just to like find all these new places. Like it's always like, what's up over that road. However, there's a few places that I just love returning to every year. There's places that, I don't know, they kind of, you form a special attachment to them.
I can't imagine us not going to Hell's Canyon every year.
Yep.
That place is just.
Yeah. And that place, has really captured my imagination too. Like that first trip that you planned, and the second trip that you planned, and
we didn't film the first one.
And now we're talking about doing a pretty big trip this next summer.
Yeah. Before we talk about that, I guess my last real question for you is, we just came to this kind of lifestyle not too long ago. What do you think? Like, do you think this is like a forever activity, or do you think this is just like a passing fad that we'll grow out of?
Man, I don't ever see growing out of this. It's funny because I keep thinking of ways to extend it as I get to be older. Like I, kind of looking into the future, ways that we can keep doing it for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many places to see. And I don't want to like stay at home and sit in my recliner watching TV all day.
Watching
I want to
YouTube of other people doing it.
Yeah, exactly. I would rather be out there doing it.
The one thing that worries me, although I'm not really worried about this, is because Idaho is just so full of public lands, and we haven't even scratched the surface in Oregon, Washington, Nevada, California, Utah, Wyoming, Montana. I mean, we live in such an amazing part of the country when it comes to public lands. I mean, we are just there's no way we could see it all in our lifetime. There's just no way. And that's just this corner of the country, let alone Arizona, New Mexico.
Yeah,
I skip over the Midwest. No, like Michigan, like the Upper Peninsula. I mean, there's Indiana has a couple amazing forests and things to.
Yeah, Pennsylvania.
The Ozarks. Oh my God, the Ozarks.
The Catskills and Smokies and then there's also Canada.
Oh my God.
And
British Columbia.
we were just talking about Baja, Mexico.
Yeah. Baja, Mexico. So the one thing it's like, okay, have I seen everything there is to see? Like when I go to Europe sometimes, I'm like, this is just another old church. I have seen so many churches on this trip. It's beautiful, but it's like when you go wine tasting or beer tasting, it's like at the end of the day, you're like, it tastes like beer. I don't know. It's thumbs up, thumbs down. I don't know anymore. I kind of just want to stop. Like I haven't got that yet, but that's what I worry. I worry that it's like, oh, it's just another $1 million view. And I become desensitized to it. I hope that never happens, but that's my one fear is that, it doesn't have that draw because we've seen so much, but I'm not that worried about it. Yeah. Speaking of so much to see, seeing so much, next summer, you and I have been talking about this, and we wanted to do it this summer, but it didn't work. No. And timing is really tricky with doing this, but you and I are going to attempt to do the entire Idaho Backcountry Discovery Trail in one trip, which starts in Jarbidge, Nevada, which I cannot wait to go back to Jarbidge. We might just go back there before the trip just to go to Jarbidge. Yeah. So cool.
Yep. We got to get some of that prime rib.
Yeah, we do. And hit some real trails, like go when the weather is good enough that we can really get on some trails. But in any case, Jarbidge, Nevada, up through, I want to say Pine and Featherville to Trinity, keep going up to
like towards McCall.
Up to Yellow Pine, through Yellow Pine, up to, Elk City, I think it is.
Yeah, like over by
Magruder corridor,
Dvorak, and
and then all the way up to Canada.
Yeah, I think you go past like Wallace, which is just such a cool old town. But I mean, we're gonna see everything from kind of like the high desert all the way to like really thick forests and some like amazing lakes and old mining towns, and
that trail is not easy. And some of the reasons that it's not easy is because of just the conditions. So I think there's only about a 3-week window where you can really do the whole thing anymore, because we have such intense fire seasons now that and we've been having really good snowpack. And so I think Magruder and Lolo were only open for 13 days because they had snow on them. By the time the snow melted, there were fires. And so we were planning to go, I think probably the best window. It's before fire season really kicks off. There could be an early fire that dampens our plans, or there could be too much snowpack and not warm enough temps that also dampen our plans. I think we'll be able to work our way around. But I think it's going to be challenging. It's going to be, I don't know, 10, 12 days, maybe something like that. So we have a lot of planning to do, but it's going to be me and you and whoever else comes with us. I think the girls might be with us for a bit. Kids might be with us for a bit, but you and I will be there the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. So have some friends that could maybe come in and out a couple of times. So
the conditions will be the most important part of that trip.
Being able to recover each other, I think, will hopefully keep it from becoming too exhausting, because as we know, like just trying to do a self-recovery just for the practice, man, it's doable, but you're going to pay for it.
It's taxing. This was a fun conversation to have, Chris, because
Mhm.
you and I this is like a fireside chat for us. We tell the story to each other from time to time. We'll recant our first overlanding experience together. And there's always some new detail that we remember, like the burning satellite. I had forgot about that until this conversation. Yeah. And, it's different for everybody. Everybody has a different entry point into this world, into this community. But I think maybe one of the things that's important to leave folks with is that it really is a community. And there's a lot of help. Mm-hmm. There's really great Facebook groups on Instagram. Yeah. You could probably reach out to any of your favorite creators with questions. And if they don't answer, move to your next favorite creator, because I know a lot of them do answer questions directly, and there's a lot of help out there. So if you're interested in getting into this, you can do it. Absolutely. You don't need a big rig. You don't need a bunch of fancy stuff. If you want to try it out, grab your 12-person tent, throw it in the back of your SUV, and go find a place to camp.
It's a great community, and it doesn't, we like to rib each other about rigs and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of brand loyalty, but at the same time too, there's still that common bond of wanting to, get out and explore. And everybody, I think, has that bond with that spirit of adventure. And so if you're new to it, ask them. And I'm sure that they're happy to talk to you about it.
Yeah, that's good advice. I should do that more. I should take your advice. I love when people do it to me. I should do it to them too.
Yeah.
Definitely. Great, man. Well, thanks, Chris. Another awesome conversation. For those of you who are listening and watching, stay tuned for more. Chris and I have a lot to say, as you can hear and see. And we've got a lot of subjects to talk about. So we're going to be doing regular podcast episodes, video podcast episodes. So tune back in. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Cannot wait to share more with you on our next episode. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.